Come the 1st of December, India will assume the G20 presidency for a year and preside over 200 meetings that aim to secure global economic growth and prosperity during this time. Together, the G20 members represent more than 80% of world GDP, 75% of international trade, and 60% of the world's population. The G20 is a strategic multilateral platform connecting the world's major developed and emerging economies. Over the years, the G20 has evolved into a yearly summit involving the heads of state and government. Sherpa meetings are also carried out to negotiate and build consensus. Working groups and special events are also organized throughout the year. India's Sherpa is Amitabh Kant, the former Chief Executive Officer of the Niti Aayog. According to Kant, G20 meetings will be held in every Indian state, and the Leaders Summit will be held in September next year in New Delhi. The meetings will cover the finance and Sherpa tracks, along with 10 engagement groups that will involve the private sector, civil society, and independent bodies. G20's finance track has 8 work streams, including global macroeconomic policies, infrastructure financing, and international taxation. The Sherpa track's 12 work streams include fighting corruption, digital economy, and environment and climate. The government recently released the logo for the G20 meetings and summit, along with a theme and a website. These were done through a speech by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, which also revealed India's 3 guiding principles going into the G20 presidency. First, serving as a bridge between the developed and developing world. Second, serving as the representative of the Eastern Bloc of nations. And third, insulating the G20 from some of the divisive pressures that have paralyzed multilateralism elsewhere. Other than an influence over the G20's agenda, the presidency does not come with any formal power. But the influence can allow India to turn the discussion in the directions it prefers. Put simply, this is an opportunity for the country to emerge as a leader to solve some of the most pressing issues facing humanity today. However, the details of how it will achieve that are complex. Under India's leadership, according to Amitabh Kant, G20 nations will look to find consensus on major challenges like a slowing global economy, a debt crisis that will impact almost 70 countries, millions around the world slipping back into poverty due to COVID-19, and the existential climate crisis.
Therefore, it's important to realize that if India has to work in its presidency, this is an opportunity for action. It's a moment of global crisis. As the Prime Minister rightly said, it's a moment of chaos and turmoil, but it's also a moment of opportunity. And therefore, we will work towards finding solutions to these challenges.
Among the 2 most important challenges is India's climate action agenda at the G20, highlighting that the developed world has not lived up to its pledge of hitting $100 billion in climate finance a year to developing countries by 2020. Kant says the focus will be on ensuring that they provide adequate finance, keeping in line with climate justice. According to him, the other challenge will be getting the developed world to restructure multilateral financial institutions so that they are geared towards increased blended finance, first loss guarantee, and credit enhancement. The goal will be to make these institutions better vehicles for achieving sustainable development goals and climate action. The second key agenda item will be reforms in institutions like the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Trade Organization. The aim is to make them more attuned to the needs and aspirations of developing economies.
Many multilateral financial institutions were structured in the post-Bretton Woods period. They are not geared for a post-COVID era. They are not geared for a post-climate change era. And therefore, our view is that there are 2 kinds of reforms required. One is the structural reforms relating to quota, etc. That is one part of the issue. The other is about ensuring that more resources flow for SDGs and for climate.
India's former ambassador to the EU and former deputy permanent representative to the UN, Manjeev Singh Puri, says with India in the G20 chair, which will be followed by Brazil's presidency, this is the time to push for reforms in multilateral institutions to reflect contemporary realities. He adds that the developed countries, which may have been opposed to such an agenda, can now see that India is chairing a group of the world's most important countries, including them. This will make them realize that having India inside the tent will be more advantageous to them.
In 2008-9, when the G20 at summit level convened, this was again a very important agenda item, reform at the Bretton Woods institution. And some elements of reforms, quota reforms, etc., did meet. We were not great beneficiaries, neither were the Brazilians, but the Chinese were. Is it time that we are able to now do something else and push for things as far as we are concerned? I think it is certainly something that will have to be pushed. Most of the most important critical decisions get taken offline, and the G20, without any doubt, is perhaps the most important offline for the largest and most important global decision.
Puri also stresses that India is uniquely placed as it takes over the presidency of the G20.
India will chair the summit, the presidency next year, and also host the summit. Thereafter, it goes to Brazil and then South Africa. There is a constellation which is possible, but above all, I believe the fact that India would be there in the midst of it, a country which is going to be acknowledged as the largest country in the world within a year, a country whose economy is among the 4 largest economies in the world. And so people are not oblivious of this. They know this. They also therefore see that there is advantage to them in collaboration.
India's G20 presidency comes at a time when it aspires to become a $5 trillion economy and a truly digital democracy. Against this backdrop, the purpose of India's presidency must be to focus on those international issues that are not only relevant to the country's development trajectory, but also achievable through consensus.
For more news, views and updates, subscribe to Business Standard on Google Podcast, Apple Podcast and Spotify. Also follow us on YouTube, Vimeo, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook and LinkedIn.